I'd like to ask something of Mr. Bennett. No. Oh, am I interrupting Molson's?
We're back live coming from H-110 with the Great Debate. I have 3 members of the City Council here. Mr. Arnold Bed, representing the MCM, Mr. Nick Oftemeyer, MAG, and Mr. Abraham Cohn, representing the Civic Party. We're going to take questions from the audience right now, starting with the gentleman sitting over there.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to ask something of Mr. Bennett. I agree that senior citizens need a better break, but I don't mind paying to use a transportation system. Now, I'd like to know very specifically how you would pay for free public transport.
Okay. We've developed a policy on this on the basis of our research and the research that was done by the CTRM, which is a Quebec government planning agency, which did an extensive study on public transportation in the Montreal metropolitan region. And there are a number of reasons for reduction of fares, and they are not purely social. It's not just talking about a measure of charity. If we're talking about a measure of charity, then the Quebec government has got the tax base and it should be providing it. You know, we don't have the tax base in Montreal to be able to do this type of thing. We're going to have to find new types of revenue sources. Now, in Paris, they have managed to extensively reduce the cost to the user of their public transportation system by imposing something called a payroll tax on all larger companies operating within their metropolitan region who benefit from public transportation. And this is a tax that is borne by the company rather than by the employees of the company, and the companies regard it as a form of fringe benefit. Instead of paying out a lot of money for the parking of their employees the way they do in Montreal, because 50% of the people who park in the downtown area don't pay for parking. The companies pay for it. You know, it's been shown by the government studies. These companies pay this payroll tax to the administration, and they use it to to keep the bus fares down. And the bus fares in Paris, I believe, are currently at about 25 cents. The private car is very heavily subsidized indirectly by the taxpayers. Every time you go on the bus, you pay a tax to the Montreal Urban Community Transportation Commission by dropping your ticket in the box. And at the same time, whenever you pay taxes that go to the city and to the MUC, you are also paying. So you're being taxed twice. The car driver is not. The car driver, it pays his normal taxes like everybody else, and then he goes on expressways that are built with public money, on roads that are repaired with public money, guarded by police who look after traffic, and 30% of the police budget goes for traffic control, and this just comes out of general tax revenues. And it has been calculated by the Quebec studies that if public transportation in Montreal were subsidized to the same extent as the private car, it would cost 13 cents for a ticket, rather than what it costs at the moment. Now, at the moment, also we should recognize that a lot of money is being paid out for unemployment insurance and for welfare. A lot of people have trouble getting to work. They can't afford cars because of the lack of interest of the administration in encouraging industrial parks within Montreal. The suburbs have been grabbing a lot of the industry, and the jobs have become increasingly less accessible over the last several years, those which are located within the MUC region. There has to be a way for people to get to their jobs, and by reducing bus fares, it would increase the disposable income of people, it would make work more accessible, and it would inject all of the money that they save on bus fares into general spending in the economy, and it would be a stimulus to the economy. And the government stimulates the economy all the time by throwing money away, you know? They gave United Aircraft $70 million to the federal government in subsidies a few years ago in the middle of a strike, and United Aircraft promptly spent all the money developing jobs in the United States and none in Montreal. So if the government's going to spend money, let them at least spend money where it's going to do some good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Oftemeyer, do you like to make a statement for that, against that, or for that, or no? Mr. Cohn? Microphone 2, please.
I've got maybe 3 questions to ask to Mr. Cohn in terms of the democracy that we have in Montreal. First of all, to my knowledge, the Civic Party does not have a program, mainly because the man who dreams it up, who runs it, who names the candidates and everything else, will tell us the program if and when he's elected. There is no program to sell to the population. The Civic Party seems to run on the personality of the mayor. And you even seem to run your campaign on the personality of the mayor. It was he who gave the good idea about how to reduce fares and so on. So far as I can see, that is not really a democratic party. That's a sham of a democratic party. Second question I'd like to ask is, are you aware also that since
Let me
1970...
answer number one, and then you can ask your second one.
Go ahead.
You know, your statements are very presumptuous.
Yeah.
Because I think in order to learn, one must ask a question, but not give the answer. If you have the answer, then there's no need to ask the question.
I asked how you call it
But
democracy.
let me tell you this, no Civic Party member is named by the mayor himself. I don't know where you get this information. This story reminds me, ladies and gentlemen, 4 years ago when Nick Oftemar sat with me in a debate in the Sadie Brauffman Center, he made a statement to the auditorium, which contained many more people than are here today, and he said, you know, I'll tell you how the Civic Party works. 5 minutes before the meeting gets underway, the agenda is delivered to the members. I leaned over to Nick Oftemar after he sat down and I said, you know, you made a statement there which wasn't quite correct. We get the agenda days before. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't know that. 4 days later or 5 days later, I'm invited to speak to the Vanier students. Now then there's a question period and a student stands up and says to me, how is it, Mr. Cohn, that in the Civic Party, minutes before your meeting, you are delivered your agenda? I said, who told you that? And he said, Nick Oftemar. You see, this is the kind of stuff that perturbs me because it's not only distortion, it's utter falsehood. Now, if you want to know how a member of the Civic Party becomes a candidate, I can tell you. But if you're telling me that he's named by the mayor and you have the answer and this is the answer you're convinced about, then I can't tell you. If you want to know, you'll ask the question. I'll tell you.
I'll ask a question. I'm just interested. This is...
Hold on, just one quick
I don't even
question.
know how do you get to be a 32nd degree Mason. This is...
No,
I'd like to know who can stand for the Civic Party if Mayor Drapeau does not want him or her to stand.
Mayor Drapeau doesn't decide who is a candidate and who is not, and he's made statements like this to the press in my presence. The people who decide who's a candidate in the Civic Party are all the members of the Civic Party. If I come
All
forth...
60 of them.
If I come forth and I suggest so-and-so is a potential candidate to the Civic Party, he's discussed, everybody's decision or answer is required, everybody's participation is required, and if there are some elements in the party who don't want him, then he's not in.
Like the mayor.
You see,
Excuse
but
me,
the
sir.
the mayor doesn't decide whether he's a member of the Civic Party or not.
Okay, in that case...
Excuse me, sir. I would like the other two councillors rebut his statement first, and then we'll go to the other microphone, then back to you.
Okay, first of all, the question of council agendas being delivered a few minutes before. It's only inaccurate in a sense what Nick said 4 years ago, because sure, we get the agendas, well, we got them 2 days before, and then we had big filibusters and fights, and now we get them several days before to give us enough time to study them. But we've had the council, fairly serious items delivered to us in City Council 2 minutes before we were supposed to vote on them. When we were debating the Grand Prix, and I think Nick will agree with me on this, all of those so-called economic impact studies and so on that were done to demonstrate how beneficial the Grand Prix was supposed to be for Montreal were deposited before council about 10 minutes before the vote. Before, and nobody was given
I know,
any
but
time to
there's
read
a
them.
distortion
Excuse me, Mr.
again.
Cohen, would you let Mr. Bennett finish, please?
And there have been other cases of that as well. Frequently, when there's an important issue, not all the time, there are many things that are delivered well enough in advance. These things are delivered just, almost on the spot. And I don't think that Mr. Cohen will be able to rebut this because we were there and we remember it. The other issue is the question of who decides members of the Civic Party. I don't know how MAG goes about picking its candidates, but in the MCM we have nominating conventions. And we have 2,000 members, well, we had 2,000 members about a month ago. I think it's several hundred more by now with the recruiting that's gone on. And when we had our nominating convention in NDG, there were about 150, 200 people there of our membership who showed up. in order to listen to the candidates, and then they voted on them. And in other districts, there were various people wanted to be candidates, and there was a vote. Now, I don't know, you know, the Civic Party doesn't have a mass membership. You know, if you like what Mayor Drapeau is doing and you want to join the Civic Party and you want to go to their meetings, you can't because they're closed meetings. It's all secret. They're only, you know, the councillors and a few organizers who are members. And if Mr. Cohen wants to rebut that, I challenge him to do it.
Could you let Mr. Oftemeyer speak first, if you'd like?
Well, I'll just comment. It speaks for itself is that if a party, well, if it's not open membership, if you can't join a party, I don't see how one can pretend that the party's democratic. As Mr. Cohen is saying, if they discuss candidates and the mayor doesn't like the candidate, he's not in.
I didn't say that.
Oh,
I
I
said
see.
the mayor had to take
If
no
somebody
part
didn't
in
like
this.
it, if somebody didn't
I
like
just
it,
said the opposite.
if somebody, you discuss it, somebody is presented, and if he gets blackballed, I suppose he's not in. Is that it?
Mr. Cohen?
Anyhow, if I just continue, is that in Municipal Action Group, we have about 2,500 members. We've had nominating convention of our 54 different districts. At least 20 of the districts had contested nominations where people actually were fighting for nominations. Anybody here can walk down the street to my office on Bishop Street and join Municipal Action Group, go to our head office and join the Municipal Action Group. Same thing with the MCM. Anybody can join the MCM. Nobody can join the Civic Party.
Mr. Cohen?
You know, everybody can join the MCM and everybody can join the MAG. Well, of course, you know. I mean, can everybody join the Liberal Party? No,
Yes.
not if you're not a Liberal.
Yeah.
If you don't share the views of the Liberal Party, you can't join it.
Yes, you can.
You don't know what the views of MAG is. It's just an on-the-spot moment organization which seeks members just to have a member. That's all it is.
How about the program? I asked you about that too.
Excuse me,
Do you
sir?
have a program?
We do have a program.
is it?
If you've watched municipal politics, the Civic Party's had a program every election.
I'm asking
Every
what the
election.
program is this time and how was it decided?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have a program this time, and if so, how was it decided
Look,
upon?
we have caucus meetings which comprises all the members of the Civic Party. And matters are discussed at caucus.
It's not
And
a
issues
program.
which
Excuse me,
merit...
sir, would you let him answer the question, please?
I beg your pardon?
No, I was just telling him to
Oh,
answer
is
the
that...
question.
You want him to ask the
No, no,
question?
go ahead, answer the
Oh.
question.
I have no question to ask him. He's
Answer
asking
the
me.
question.
You say there's no program, but you see there's another, you know, a statement which is just stated through your hat because it's not so. I mean, you see, it's so easy to give a false impression by repeating the big lie over and over again. When you call the Civic Party a dictatorial party, when you call the mayor a dictator, if you read that over and over again in the press all the time, you're bound to believe it.
You mean like the
Because you
Olympics
don't
not
know
having
any
debts?
better, and I don't blame you, become a victim to the repetition of what is being stated by the Bennetts and by the Oftermauers and by the MCM and their friends. You know, this is what happens. But the average person who criticizes really does not know other than hearing the repetitious statements.
Thank you
true.
very much, Mr. Cohen.
Just one quick thing.
Can we go to microphone 2 first, and we'll go back to you?
All right, if you want. I just wanted to say that I worked for Mayor Drapeau for 10 years in City Hall, and I know how he accepts criticism.
Okay. The microphone.
Well, I've worked for Mr. Drapeau for longer than you have, and I know how he accepts criticism.
Thank you,
And not in
gentlemen.
the same manner in which you think.
Thank you, gentlemen. Go to microphone 2, please.
I have a couple questions. The first one's for Mr. Cohn, since the spotlight's on him right now. You mentioned before that you weren't criticizing the PQ government when you gave an example about the way they had to change their platform. There've been some talk or rumors that the PQ would be happy if Drapeau got in again. Is this true?
I don't think it's true.
You don't
But
think they'd be
no.
happy?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I want to tell you that I wasn't being critical of the PQ. I was merely
No, you made that very clear. That's what
giving an
awakened
example
my interest.
of what it's like being in the opposition and what it's like being in power. Not the same.
Mr.
You know,
I-
you've had the great CCF governments out west have been kicked out after all their miraculous promises, and which weren't worth anything at all.
Mr. Bennett?
Oh, no.
It's okay? Mr. Oftemeyer? No? Microphone 1, please.
Okay, I would like to ask Mr. Cohn some questions. I will start with some of the steps which his party has taken since they came to power. First of all, you mentioned some issues, some great things which Mayor Drapeau has done for Montreal. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Metro, Expo, Place des Arts, but it seems to me that you forgot an important and a recent one. You forgot the Olympic Stadium.
I didn't forget about it, sir.
And I question, may I finish my question, please? And I question whether, was it in purpose or you just slept the question, or you didn't want to present certain facts which we are all aware here and you are trying to avoid it. Why did you do so?
Well, what are you referring to?
Okay, can you explain to the people here how the village, the cost, the enormous cost, which was really more than what it was planned at the very beginning, and all the whole corruption which it was taken during the build of the Olympic Village. Can you...
You're talking about the Olympic Games. Look, I was going to continue, but I had a time limit. Were you here when the chairman stopped me?
Well,
well, why did you see? You mustn't accuse me of forgetting to say anything when I was taking everything in its chronological order, and I was coming to it. I consider that a great accomplishment.
You're probably right. I do not object to that. But would you, please of kind, answer to the people here? What about the Olympic Stadium, the costs and all this?
Look, as you know, there's an inquiry going on now under the chairmanship of Judge Malouf. You know that. You know that some evidence has been given. You also know that not all the evidence has been given, and that this inquiry is going to receive many, many more witnesses in the forthcoming months and right up until sometime in spring. Thinking as a lawyer, and because of this investigation going on now by this commission, I am not going to sit in judgment and answer your question. Why not wait until this inquiry is all over, when all the evidence has been delivered, and when all the facts are known? There are many, many factors involved in this matter, you know. There were labor stoppages. You remember when there were schedules to meet, and I'm not saying this is the only cause or the cause. I'm giving other instances as to why there were overruns and why the costs ran into what they were. And there were instances where there was pure and simple sabotage, which made workers work weekends and nights and time and a half, and many of them were earning $1,500 a week because of this follow-up of the schedule, because labor stoppages, because schedules having to be met on time. And I'm not saying this was the sole cause or the only cause. There were threats on the site by some groups to others, ordering them to slow down. Where a man should have worked 8 hours, he was putting in 3 hours and being paid for 8. Where he could have finished his job in 8 hours, he had to work nights and get double time. Now, I am not saying again, this is it, but why, if you want to have a fair, objective view of what really happened, you're not going to sit in judgment now, I would suggest. Wait and see what all the evidence reads, and wait and hear what the decision of the commission is. And then we can sit in judgment and criticize and talk and complain against whoever we want.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, would you let Mr. Oftermeyer...
Exactly, that's what I want to mention also.
Mr. Oftermeyer, do you want to make a statement again?
No, I don't want to make anything except that if you really want to know what went on in the Olympics, this is not a selling my book because it's out of print, but it's in the library, The $1 Billion Game. It's proven up until where the Malouf inquiry has gotten so far, the book has proven pretty accurate.
Unfortunately, Mr. Oftermeyer does have to leave. Mr. Ben, you want to make a statement?
Yeah, last night we had a public meeting in NDG for all of the candidates, and the MCM was there, and MAG was there, and 2 of the Civic Party candidates were there. And unlike Mr. Cohen, Mr. Jutra, who was one of the Civic Party candidates in the district, tried to cast all of the blame on the workers and said the radical unions were to blame for the Olympic deficit. So I sort of asked innocently from the background, what union did Mr. Tayaber belong to? And Jutra turned around and said, yes, Comrade Bennett. which was on the radio today, or I wouldn't bother to mention it, and the audience sort of erupted in indignation. I think that the evidence is clear. Nick talked about it in his book, and we've talked about it in council for the last few years, and Judge Maloof is talking about it, and the media are talking about it. And I'd sort of like to know, never mind such things as may be considered sub judice as what Mr. Needing's fault actually was. But I'd like to know from Mr. Cohen why Mr. Drapeau couldn't keep these things under control, seeing as he's supposed to have such an iron grip on the administration and know everything that's going on. You can't have it both ways. You can't on the one hand have a very disciplined, tight little party like that, and have a right-hand man for many years, and then when certain questions are raised, claim it has nothing to do with municipal affairs. And I'd like to know, why is it that when Reggie Trudeau went ahead and built a parking lot that had to be torn down because it was so incompetently done, why they were given the contract along with the other contractors to rebuild it, and why they were never sued for the money that they wasted the first time around? I'd like to know why it is that Taillabert was picked in such complete secrecy, and why we couldn't have had a local architect at much less cost who probably could have done the job much more competently in terms of the cost overruns. There are all sorts of questions like this. And, to say, well, the people will judge when the Maloof inquiry is over. Well, we have an election here in 2 weeks, and the record is pretty damn clear. And even if other people than Mayor Drapeau are responsible, and even if it's not all his fault, and nobody's saying it is all his fault, the fact is that a very great portion of the blame lies with the administration. And it is pure, sophism to say, well, let people judge later. I think that enough of the facts are out that people can judge now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Cohen, would you like to answer that?
Well, for someone who preaches democracy constantly and is prepared to launch an accusation without hearing both sides and the whole story, tells me that the man knows very little about democracy. After all, this is the whole principle and cardinal rule, to hear both sides and to hear the whole story.
Excuse me, Mr.
Instead
Cohen,
of coming
may I interrupt you for just a second, please? You can continue. Mr. Offenmeyer does have to leave, but the debate will continue. But no one please make any accusations towards the MAG. This is not here to answer them.
If you have any questions, ask me. Just drop by our headquarters there on Bishop Street.
Thank you, Mr. Offenmeyer. I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen. You can continue now.
No, that's the way I live by this rule. Maybe it's because I've been trained as a lawyer to live by this rule, but I live by this rule. And I've seen too often charges and accusations made against innocent people. But these charges would never have been made had the whole story been heard. Now, in this line of thinking of Mr. Needing and all the rest, I don't know. Maybe there's truth to it. Maybe there isn't. But for heaven's sake, if we're going to still live in a democratic, civilized society, let us wait and see what has been said by all before we sit in judgment. After all, who are we to sit in judgment at this stage of the game when we don't know what all the facts are? When a man is accused of murder, that accusation will reach striking, huge, black, bold type headlines. What happens 2 months later when that man is acquitted because he was accused on the charge of murder in error? Not the same thing at all. But the label still seems to stay with him. So my attitude, and this is my personal view, and I can assure Mr. Bennett that the mayor didn't tell me what to say here, and I didn't consult him either, that before any one of you or anyone in the public decides to become indiscreet and perhaps embarrassed and lay complaints and charges, not knowing all the facts, the watchword should be prudence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen.
Okay, I just have a
Can we
short...
go to microphone 2 and go back to you, please?
I want to finish because I had 2 questions from the very beginning.
We'll take one at a time, okay?
Okay.
Oh. Mr. Cohen, have you considered the fact that we have to sit in judgment of a party to run the city for the next 4 years without knowing all the facts? And that those in a position to know are refusing to comment.
Yes.
How do you answer this?
If the people want to elect any government for the next 4 years, it's the people's right. It's the people's right. Refusal to comment. If my brother should be involved in some scandalous matter, and I don't want to answer for him, could I be accused of being a participant?
Mr. Bennett?
I think the problem here with the Civic Party is that Mr. Cohen is neglecting to mention that for 4 years in City Council, we asked that there be a regular item on the agenda where we could ask all these questions on the Olympics and what was happening with the contractors and all of these things that were coming out before the public and that were being published in the media. And the administration chose during that 4-year period to refuse to comment, except to assure us that the Olympics could no more have a deficit than a man could have a baby and just leave the water running till the bathtub's full and everything's going to be fine. They refused this question period. They refused this regular item on the agenda. They repeatedly refused all our motions to this effect, and we couldn't extract anything from the administration. Neither could the media. Neither could the Quebec government, either the current government or the previous government, when Mr. Drapeau went to speak before the National Assembly and just skated around all of these fundamental issues. And for that, the Quebec government can be blamed, because they should have taken the responsibility to intervene and make sure that this type of thing didn't happen if the municipal administration wasn't going to take the responsibility. But let's not have this business about, crying in our beer about the fact that the Malouf inquiry, all of these damaging revelations are coming out in testimony before the election, and heaven forbid the poor Civic Party administration might be condemned by the voters before all the information is out. Why didn't the administration have anything to say during the 4 years that they could have said something? Why did we need a public inquiry in the first place? Because we couldn't get the answers any other way.
Mr. Cohen? You care to make a rebuttal?
No.
No?
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to ask a second question concerning the committees which you've mentioned before. Well, first of all, you spoke a lot about democracy, and when Mr. Nick Optimeyer said that after 1960 the committees were abolished by Jean Drapeau, you said that we cannot judge the principles of democracy whether or not we have committees. Now, the question is, how are you going to appeal to the people? Because you are the municipal government, you are the sole government in the entire country, you are closer to the people, and you are dealing directly with people. And I think nobody can object to this. Now, when you have no committees, how do you expect to appeal to the people? In other words, how do you expect to go closer to the people to examine and discuss the problems which they face in their daily life? Have you, without these committees, done in the past? No, I'm not directing personally to you. Has the Civic Party done in the past?
Has the Civic Party done in the past?
Yes. Has the Civic Party came to a closer to the people without these committees? For example, not only the mayor, but the candidates, because I came from an area where we have not seen the mayor since 8 years, except this Sunday we're expecting to see him in a big rally towards his favor, but we have never seen him ever since, neither some of his council members. And a second question concerning, again, democracy. I believe that your party is dictatorial, and I have proof to show you right now that he has chosen by himself directly 2 candidates, namely Mr. Manolakos in riding 25 and Mr. Savoidakis riding 26. Are you aware of that? Please answer directly.
Look, if the mayor recommended these 2 people...
I'm asking you, please answer directly.
I don't know.
You are not.
No.
Therefore, how can you tell me, as you tell to the people before, that you are electing democratic your council members?
I just said that the mayor doesn't decide alone. I said everybody in the party decides that, whether a candidate becomes a candidate or not. And in the case of Manolakis and his friend, it was a decision of the whole party, not of the mayor himself.
All 60 of them.
Okay. What about the committees?
Now, you say because there are no committees, there is no closeness to the people. I mean, the facts speak for themselves.
I didn't
This is
say.
an administration has been in
I'm
a...
sorry, but
Would you let him answer the question, sir?
But you are
Excuse me, sir.
misinterpreting.
Excuse me, sir. Would you let him answer the question, please? Thank you.
I like to ask the question.
You've asked 3 questions already, sir.
Yes,
Would you let him
but
answer
he
it,
is
please?
misinterpreting my question.
Mr. Cohen, go ahead.
He's twisting the
Sir,
question.
would you let him answer the question, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
For 5 successive terms, the population of the city of Montreal has overwhelmingly elected the mayor and the Civic Party. Then how can you say he's not close to the people? Neither is the party. For 5 successive terms for the last 18 years, the people of Montreal, as their free and democratic wish, wanted the mayor and the Civic Party to run the government of this city. And you're trying to suggest that there's no closeness between the administration and the government of the Civic Party and the people? That's my answer to you.
Okay, can you tell me?
Excuse me,
And if you-
excuse me, sir. Would you like Mr.
and-
Bennett answer that,
Okay.
please?
Well, you know, there's an assumption here that because a government gets elected, that it's close to the people. Governments can get elected by default. In the 1960s, there was no opposition to Drapeau.
Right.
There was no organized party. As a matter of fact, until 1970, there wasn't even universal suffrage. In 1970, there was an election in which the official opposition was smeared by Drapeau as being a front for the FLQ, and Drapeau got 55 out of 55 seats, and he declined to postpone the election out of the October crisis because he said it wouldn't be democratic to do that, and it's got to go ahead. Now, when the administration runs into trouble over the Malouf inquiry, you know, they start weeping crocodile tears. And in 1974, I would say that 55% of the popular vote, compared to 92% for the mayor in 1970, is by no means an overwhelming majority. I think that a lot of people in the city have started to get, you know, pretty fed up with the lack of democratic procedures. Now, what are those democratic procedures? I'm not going to go into the whole thing about commissions of council again, because, you know, we feel that commissions of council are only one thing. If you have a committee of council and you've got nothing else, then it's not really much of an improvement. It means that maybe people can come to these public commission hearings, they can hear what's going on, and fine, they're a little bit more informed. But you don't really have democracy until you give people in the neighborhood some real say over what's happening. And when we were first elected 4 years ago, we asked some of the top bureaucrats in the city if they, from various city departments in NDG, can you please come into NDG to public meetings that we will organize with the community groups and talk to the people about how you provide services to the citizens and answer questions. And they said, I'm sorry, this just isn't done. The councillors are supposed to be the intermediaries between the administration and the people. And we found that unacceptable. And finally, during the big fight over the demolition around the metro station, for the first time, we managed to get top city bureaucrats to come into an NDG and meet with the public and answer their questions, and then we had a little bit of democracy, and then we got things changed. Because we don't feel that the councillors are supposed to be there to represent the administration in front of the people. The councillors should be there to represent the people in the administration, or in the opposition, as the case may be, and make sure that people's interests are represented, and that they're in direct contact, not just every 4 years when there's an election and they go to vote, but every time an issue comes up that affects them.
Thank you very much. Microphone 2, please.
Yeah, I was going to talk about some of these smaller projects that so far that we're supposed to be so happy for. And I'm often amazed, I'm sort of directing it to both of you, but I'm often amazed by the speed at which projects get done in terms of the Grand Prix when a decision is made. We'll have a Grand Prix now. This summer, a track was completely laid out and built, and the race was run, supposedly with great success, although I wasn't there. And now we're stuck with the track on an island that's a mess. And you're telling me when I was small, I was young, and I wasn't aware of city politics, but I have to admit that since I've been growing up, I've had to look at parking lots all down both sides of Dorchester Boulevard. I've had to look at total destruction in the East End. I've had to look at masses of destroyed buildings. Since 1969, when the Expos were given a franchise in Montreal, they built a stadium over the winter with no trouble at all. But since they've left 2 years ago, the citizens around Jarry Park, where there's a complete lack of park ground, haven't been able to get rid of 14 acres of asphalt, which is put all over the grass. And for 2 years, it's just, you know, the kids are playing on gravel. and now you tell me that we're supposed to be happy?
Mr. Cohen?
He's not asking you a question, is he?
I'm asking what you can do.
What is your question?
Okay, why when a project is done there isn't provision made to clean it up or to make sure that the project is completed to its full extent instead of leaving half measures all over the city?
Which project are you referring to?
Many. I named 3 there.
Well, give me which one are you referring to?
Okay, take Jerry Park, for instance.
Yes. What about it?
In 1969, the Expos were given a franchise in Montreal. They were told
But
that
what's the condition of Jerry Park today?
it's a mess. There's 2 parking lots covering what used to be football and baseball fields. There's a stadium that's not being used, which covers acres of green grass.
Well, what did you do? I myself, you know, I'm not omnipresent. I'm not over the entire city every single day. And if you are, did you do anything about
Yes.
it? Did you complain about this?
The
What did you
councillors
do?
have been informed
By
many
the way-
times.
I beg your pardon?
The councillors in our area have been informed many times.
Yes. And?
They say, we'll look into it.
You never got an answer as to
Never.
the reason why?
Never.
Well, I'll be glad to get you an answer.
what
if
I'm
you want to
looking-
give me your name and your address and
But
your phone number, I'll
but
get
I'm
you an
s-
answer.
Okay, okay, but has a wider, I gave you that
Will you do
example.
that? Will you do that?
Yes. I
Will
gave
you give me
that,
your name and address
yes.
and phone number? Fine.
I gave you that as an example only as a wider issue over the city as a whole.
Well, I'd
And
be glad to
what I
answer
can't-
that. I'd be glad to get the information for you. I haven't
Okay.
got the answer for you now because I haven't been there and I don't know what the condition is. But if you say it's so, it may be so, and I'd like to find out why. So you just give me your name and address and phone number after this meeting, and I'll be glad to inform you of it within a few
Okay,
days.
and Mr. Bennett, I have another question for you.
Would you let Mr. Bennett answer?
Yeah, if you want to answer that question.
Okay, just in reference to this Jerry Park problem, we've raised this in council. Andre Berthelez, an MCM councillor for Villeray, which includes your area, he's received the complaints from the citizens and he's spoken in council on this. And we've gotten evasive answers and no action from the city on the issue. Maybe Mr. Cohen wasn't in council on those nights. And certainly it's not his district, so I can understand why nobody's complained to him directly. But the point is, it's not just a matter of getting an answer. It's a matter of doing something about it, and I agree with you. It's a matter of saying these neighborhood things are priorities and something's got to be done. We have problems we had a problem in NDG, for example. Head and Hands, which is a community organization that works with youth, was having a lot of trouble in southern NDG finding recreation space for the kids. And finally they found that some landlord had just abandoned a warehouse and it was in between tenants and and it was up for rent. So they wrote to the city and they said, look, here's a situation where if you move in the next few weeks, you can get a recreation center for the community fairly cheaply that will meet a need. Bureaucratic delays, can't be done, has to go through channels. Well, we got to find a way to cut those channels. It's not a matter of finding excuses, but look, when it's something like the Grand Prix, sure, right away.
Another question, sir?
Yeah, I want to be, if you could be a little more specific on terms of, it's a term that they call gentrification, in other words, the remodeling of houses, renovation is a more popular term. When in areas, let's say like a Crescent Street, okay, it's obviously commercial, so those houses are lost. But how do you propose to prevent the losing of other areas, especially with the opening of the University de Quebec at Montreal in the Saint Denis area? How do you expect to leave housing the way it is instead of having them renovated for commercial use, for boutique, that type of thing, or just because of the high rent?
It's a responsibility that's shared jointly between Montreal and Quebec. Quebec controls the rental board. Quebec is going to have to take its responsibility to ensure that tenants are protected against getting evicted and against exorbitant rent increases. Montreal's role in this, however, is to ensure that no renovation subsidies are given out to the landlords unless criteria are met that protect the tenants, and I mentioned some of those before. A freeze on evaluation after renovation, so that people who are in good faith don't get hit with tax increases that they're going to pass on. Rent subsidies to tenants in the case of landlords who are in good faith, and giving the tenants in the buildings a role in determining what type of renovation is going to be done so that they don't get hit with luxury repairs that they can't afford and then they get forced out. And absolutely no profiteering allowed and very tight controls. And if these conditions aren't met, no renovation subsidies to these landlords. The city should also consider, in cases where an area is deteriorating because of landlord refusal to act, acting in conjunction with CMHC at the Ottawa level and with Quebec to acquire such buildings, renovate them itself, and turn it over either for cooperative housing, where appropriate, or use it for public housing. These are the type of solutions that are involved. There are other ones as well. We have a very detailed renovation program, and I'll be glad to give you a copy.
Does anyone on microphone 1 like to ask a question? No? But anyone else like to ask a question? Well, I'd like to ask a question, if it's possible. I have interviewed both these gentlemen on CRSG, and there seems to be a misinforming of the public about Mr. Drapeau's performance within City Council himself. Mr. Bennett says that he is pretty much a dictator. That's not exact words. That's the sum up of what he said. He leads the council. He's the chairman. He's the Speaker of the House, and he doesn't let things go as the opposition party wants. Mr. Cohn, on the other hand, says that Mr. Drapeau is very loose with his rules. He stretches them, he leans back and lets the maximum amount of debate go on. And I just want you to sum up what you told me earlier on in the interview that I did with you.
Yep. Well, I assume what Mr. Cohen is going to say that is that Mr. Drapeau is very gentlemanly and that he often lets people vote after they've gone out to the bathroom and they've missed the vote and so on, and other little things like this, and that often the debate proceeds very politely and it isn't tense and there's no confrontation. This is frequently very true. However, when the administration is put on the spot, the fact is that Mayor Drapeau is the mayor, he is the leader of the civic party, he's the head of the government, and he is the Speaker of the House. And seeing as Mayor Drapeau has had the opportunity over the years in which there was no opposition in council to make all of the council rules, in conjunction with the civic party, I assume, but seeing as it's pretty well a closed organization, it's hard to tell what goes on inside there, then those rules are used in order to stifle democratic debate on several occasions. And I'll give you one very good example.
Just let me ask you a question. Why haven't the rules been changed?
Well, the rules haven't been changed because the majority on council is the civic party and they vote the way Mayor Drapeau wants them to vote.
Go back to your example, please.
The most glaring example that I can remember recently was when we raised the issue of the criteria for getting people into public housing. And it happened that we had certain specific examples of one person who there's no point in naming because that would be unfair to the individual, who had an income 2.5 times as high as the maximum allowable, who had managed to get into public housing when there were hundreds of people on the waiting list. And there were also many bureaucratic problems with the municipal housing office. The neighborhood offices had been closed down. It had all been centralized at downtown. And people who wanted to apply for public housing had to phone in, and there were only two telephone numbers. So there were these senior citizens who were dialing again and again and again and again, and they couldn't get through. And we wanted to ask all of these questions as well as many others. And we wanted to ask Mr. Legault, who was director of the City Housing Department and also director of the Municipal Housing Office. And Mayor Drapeau said, no, you may not ask any questions on this to Mr. Legault as director of Municipal Housing Office because that is not under the jurisdiction of the council. And there was a very heavy debate on that, and we made our charges public outside the council because we were not at that time allowed to discuss them in council. And I won't go into all the details, but what happened is eventually Mayor Drapeau decided, well, Mr. Lamar answered a number of these questions quite inadequately in some cases in writing. And other questions, the specific case of how people were selected, Mayor Drapeau said he was referring it to the chief judge of the municipal court. A month later, we came back to council. The chief judge of municipal court had bounced the thing right back to Mayor Drapeau and said it wasn't his jurisdiction to do that. It was a problem of the administration of the city council. And therefore, Mayor Drapeau agreed, finally, that we could have the plenary committee that we had demanded during the budget debate so that we could ask these questions of Mr. Legault. We raised the questions. We didn't get satisfactory answers. There was a confrontation which erupted in particular when Mr. Legault accused us of insinuations in bad faith in saying that there were only 2 phone lines where people could phone in. He said there were actually 9. Seven for the bureaucrats to call out and 2 for people to phone in. Same difference. That's an insinuation and that's bad faith. So the people who were asking the questions for us got quite annoyed. There was a shouting match and Mayor Drapeau got up, rang the bell suddenly. The person who was chairing the plenary, who was one of the Civic Party councillors, stepped down and Mayor Drapeau walked out of the room. Now, he has previously done things like this when the Assembly has gotten out of order and it has been adjourned for a few minutes or for a couple of hours or until the next day. This time he decided unilaterally that he was going to terminate the rest of the agenda because all that was left on the agenda was a number of motions that had been presented by the MCM. And we took the mayor to court on this and said that was illegal, and that case is still sub judice, but we did get past our first hearing stage and it was given to another judge to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Cohen?
That's a very long answer for a very simple question. All that Mr. Bennett really admitted is that what he said about the mayor presiding over meetings is absolutely untrue.
Huh?
That's the only incident he can bring up, but he didn't tell you the whole story because, you see, that's the way he talks. He talks, like the Indians say, with a forked tongue. He doesn't tell the story as it was. What really happened for the closure of that meeting was that there was a councillor, a very vociferous one, by the name of Berthelin, who stood up and refused to be called to order and kept shouting until his lungs gave up. And not only did he refuse to stop shouting, but all his colleagues, including Mr. Bennett, joined with him in this horrible scene of bedlam. And there was no order or control. It became a meeting in the jungle. And the mayor had no other choice but to call an end to that meeting right then and there. This is the point that my friend here, by design or otherwise, doesn't make mention of. But I can tell you this much, that if anybody runs a meeting fairly and squarely and giving benefit of the doubt to the opposition, it's John Drapeau. I'll tell you that much. And I defy anyone to deny this. The only example that Mr. Bennett can give was this very lengthy, drawn-out story that he tells, but that doesn't say one single bit about the mayor not being fair in running meetings. As a matter of fact, there are times when he breaks the rules to lean backwards in favor of the opposition in matters of procedure. And it's something which I don't agree with him doing at all, but nevertheless, he does it. So no one, even the news media, nobody, those who don't like him, cannot come out and accuse him of being unfair as chairman of a council meeting.
Thank you.
The rules, I want to say one thing. Mr. Bennett says the rules were made by the city, by the Civic Party. Now that's an absolute lie. The rules were not made by the Civic Party. The rules were there many, many years before the Civic Party ever came into City Hall. But anything goes with Mr. Bennett. The rules were there a long time ago. And all we do, and all the chairman does, whenever he sits in his job as chairman, is apply those rules. That's what he does, and that's what his job is. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing his job. As a matter of fact, when we began sitting in council meetings, I wish some of you were there at the very beginning 4 years ago. A complete, total disrespect for order. Elementary order, elementary rules. Heavens, if any parliament would be run or conducted the way some of the opposition carried on at the very beginning, they've behaved themselves now, they've learned the rules now. They've become civilized and they've agreed that these are the rules and they must follow them. And things are much quieter now. But any parliament or government, any body or any legislature which would have carried on the way we saw certain elements carry on in the MCM at the beginning, would be ashamed to see that. An utter disgrace.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Bennett, we're running short of time. I just want to know, can you give more examples to justify what you've made?
Yeah, there are other...
Just yes or no, because we're very short on
Yes, I
time.
can give other examples. No, I'm not going to go into extensive detail because there wouldn't be very much point, but I can remember remember at least 6 or 7 incidents, which were reported in the media, incidentally, in which there were confrontations of this type. And who one attaches the blame to, of course, Mr. Cohen would like to bring the light of civilization to us poor, ignorant savages from the, from the masses of the population who, don't know the rules and haven't been there long enough to be gentlemen. Well, the fact is we're there to represent the people, and we learned the rules, and there were certain times when there were confrontations, and there were certainly times when our people got annoyed and got out of hand, and there were certainly at least as many times when there was the most extreme heckling and red baiting and name calling and noise and so on from the members of the Civic Party benches. So, let's not, try and be holier than thou about this. As far as the issue of the rules not being made by the Civic Party and this being a total lie, I think Mr. Cohen had better realize that it's one thing to talk about the basic core of rules of procedure which are accepted in any legislature and in any meeting, and there's another thing about the little embellishments and the additions and the interpretations that have been made in all of the years that Mayor Drapeau has been Mayor of Montreal and the Civic Party has had its majority, and modifications have been made to the city charter, and let's face it, the rules are much more open in other cities than they are in Montreal. We don't have public question periods in Montreal. We don't have a lot of other things that we could have because Mayor Drapeau and the Civic Party don't want them. And the rules could be changed if the majority wanted to, but the majority does not want to. And some of the rules were there before, but the most restrictive rules, many of them were there afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Bennett, sorry. Mr. Cohen, do you want to answer that at all? If not, we'll stop right here.
There were no restrictive rules, and I tell you this, there were no restrictive rules inserted in the rules of council after Mr. Drapeau got there. On the contrary, the rules were enlarged. Before the MCM came, before there was an opposition, we changed the rules to permit question periods. Not instigated or introduced by the MCM, but by the Civic Party. Question periods, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they were first for 15 minutes and they came into to be for 30 minutes afterwards. On questions of matters being put or questions being asked by the general public at large, look, if you come down to a city council meeting, unless the MCM has a special item on the agenda in which they have a special interest, and they bring all their bosom pals down into the galleries, that's the only time you have a substantial number of spectators in the balconies and the galleries. But other than that, people don't come. People work during the day. They come home at night. They're tired. They're not tempted to go to council meetings at 8 o'clock at night and sit up till 11 or midnight.
In Hampstead and Côte St. Lucie.
Hampstead, how? Don't compare Hampstead with a council of 6 with the problems that they have to a council of 55 with the problems that we have, with the 3rd or 4th largest budget in the country, a budget greater than most of the provinces with the exception of 2. Can't compare Hampstead and Trois-Pistoles and Timbuktu with the city of Montreal. So, things have to be done and progress has to be made, and there are items on the agenda which are of great importance, which must be adopted and passed. And in the city like the city of Montreal just can't have people sitting in the balcony asking questions all night. And I don't think people want to ask questions in the balcony and ask questions all night. Why not? I don't know, ask the people. They're not there. Have you ever come to a city council meeting? Yes or no? Have you?
You can't.
Well, all right. I have no other questions. What do you mean you can't? Why? Why?
Excuse me, sir. Would you like to come down to the microphone, please? Very quickly now, please. We're running a little short of time.
The problem is that you just can't go to council meetings in Montreal. Is that true or not?
That's not true.
It's not true.
Unfortunately,
You can go, you just can't say anything.
Oh, you can't say anything, so you can't ask questions. You can't, right?
I just gave explanations as to why I personally don't favor that and why it's not done in principle.
I'd just like to make one short comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Look, So Montreal's a big city. Toronto is a big city, and they have public question periods, and it's not a matter of wasting a lot of time and taking up all night. You have a limited time. Even the Toronto Transit Commission, which is far from a democratic organization and which is a parapublic corporation, has open meetings where people can come down and present briefs, and groups of citizens can present briefs. And, you know, I don't think there's any point going on this at length. There's a type of administration which totally discourages public participation in democracy and in the decision-making process, and there's a type that wants to open it up, and I think you see the difference here.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. I have Arnold Bennett from the MCM, Mr. Nick Oftemar had to leave from representing MAG, and Mr. Abraham Cohen representing the Civic Party. I also want to thank the members of CUTV for covering this event, CRSG, and the Debating Society, and DSA Programming. Again, gentlemen, thank you for coming. This has been quite informative.
Thank you.
Now back to regular programming on CRSG.